Unless you've won a Nobel Prize or an Emmy nomination, when the phone rings at 5 a.m., it is never good news. I groggily brace myself as I answer. It's my friend Grace. Sorry to call so early. George had a massive stroke. Shit. George and his wife Martha, transplanted Chicago theater friends of ours, are 75, childless, and have no family that they care to acknowledge. So I roll out of bed and rush to meet Grace at the hospital to see what I can do to help. We are told that George's left side is paralyzed. He can speak, but is confused and talking nonsense. The doctor tells us that once he's stabilized, he'll have to go to rehab to continue his recovery, whatever that may be. Shit. George has spent the last decade caring for Martha as she fights metastatic breast cancer, so they are both going to need a lot of help. Two more of their old friends from Chicago theater days, Linda and Sally, arrive at the hospital, and our little gang of four starts hashing out the bare outlines of what needs to be done for both of them. Grace takes insurance, Sally will coordinate friends to babysit Martha, Linda will handle bill paying, and I will stay on top of medical treatment at the hospital, which doesn't seem too difficult given that he's under the watchful eye of the ICU. But merely a week later, he unexpectedly gets moved to some random rehab with no explanation. I try talking to the new nurses and doctors, but no one will give me any information about his condition or prognosis. No medical professional will talk to me because I'm not family. I am told I can't get any info without a medical power of attorney. I should mention that this isn't my first rodeo, having taken care of both of my parents at the end of their lives. They were divorced, lived in New York, and both had dementia. I traveled cross-country once a month to manage their care and deal with their Alzheimer's-induced insanity. I hired 25 aides until we found someone that could work with my paranoid mother and who she liked enough not to fire. I had to intervene when my father chased his aide with a golf club because he thought she was an intruder. And again, when he dropped trow and demanded sexual favors because he thought she was a hooker. Why else would a strange woman be in his apartment? It was a stressful, sad, exhausting decade in which I feared for their lives and the lives of people around them. It was a full-time job that sapped my emotional strength and robbed time from my family and career. And I'm an only child, so there was no one with whom to share the burden. When it was finally over, I admit that I was incredibly relieved and so glad that I would never have to do it again. And now, at George's bedside, I see the caregiver train hurtling down the track toward me. While I want to jump out of the way, George needs a strong, experienced advocate, as will Martha, whose cancer doctors aren't going to talk to me either. Is it going to be me that steps up for both of them? I realize with dread that I have to make a decision that could once again destabilize my life. Spending days chasing down doctors to make decisions I feel unqualified for, ordering their lives while mine falls into disarray. I want to help, but I have no interest in taking them on as a long-term project. But George and Martha were so much like my parents. Accomplished people with a lifetime of achievements who are now spoken to like toddlers and fed and diapered like infants. And I think about how diminished and humiliated I would feel if it were me. How frustrating and painful it would be to be reduced to being a burden and an obligation, I would want someone to think I was worth it. So, okay. I fill out the forms and get George and Martha to agree to appoint me medical power of attorney, taking the risk that getting further in will actually help me get out of caregiver jail. I hope against hope that if I get the information from the rehab, I can help them set up care moving forward and walk away feeling like I did the right thing. But what I found out with my new power was that though the doctors and therapists would continue to work with him to help him regain what function he could, the best we could hope for was limited use of his left arm and leg. He was never going to be able to walk any distance, if at all, and wouldn't be cutting his own meat anytime soon. Even worse, he would probably also never regain enough executive function to make his own medical decisions, let alone Martha's. I was now going to be in charge of all of their medical decisions, possibly forever. And so here I am, once again, the caretaker. God damn it. Caregiver parole was denied, and I've been given a life sentence. But once you're in, it's very hard to say, no, I just can't, when there's no one else. And frankly, I'm now good at it. I've learned how not to take things personally, how to speak about difficult things directly but compassionately. But don't get me wrong, it sucks sometimes. Nobody expects to watch their friend's diaper being changed or get their car detailed after an accident or become intimately immersed in the more gnarly details of their 54-year marriage. I am at times incredibly resentful that I allowed myself to get sucked into being responsible for people I'm not related to and never even saw more than a few times a year. But I like to be of service. I'm not interested in being a hero nor a martyr, but I can't seem to shake the belief that we have a responsibility to care for one another while we're here. Creating order in a small corner of the world when so many terrible things seem beyond my control provides a reward for the sacrifice. Caregiving 2.0 has now been going on for 3 years. 3 years of diapers and wipes, doctors, and decisions. This summer, we buried Martha and held George up in his grief. Last weekend, we had her memorial. George is safely, if not happily, ensconced in a nursing home with good care that I monitor. The Gang of Four still has the occasional dinner for moral support with a few bottles of wine and a good dose of dark humor. When I answered that 5 a.m. phone call, I never in a million years thought it would lead to becoming a caregiver once again. Do I wish I could choose differently? Hell yeah. People like to tell me, you're doing God's work. But you know what? I wish you would do it yourself.